The Pilgrims' Progress by John Bunyan, Chapter 3. Now as Christian was walking solitary by himself, he espied one afar off, crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way to each other. This gentleman's name was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carnal Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man having some knowledge of him, for Christian's setting forth from the city of destruction was much noised abroad, not only in the town where he dwelt, but also it began to be the town talk in some other places. Mr. Worldly Wiseman, therefore, having some guess of him by beholding his laborious going, by beholding his sighs and groans and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. "How now, good fellow, whither away after this burdened manner?"
"A burdened matter indeed, as ever I think poor creature had. And whereas you ask me whither away, I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate before me, for there, as I am informed, I shall be put in a way to be rid of my heavy burden."
"Hast thou a wife and children?"
"Yes, but I am so laden with this burden, I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly methinks I am if I had none."
"Wilt thou hearken to me if I give thee good counsel?"
"If it be good, I will, for I stand in need thereof."
"I would advise thee, then, that thou with all speed get rid of thy burden, for thou wilt never be settled in thy mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the benefits of the blessings which God hath bestowed upon thee till then."
"That is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden. But get it off myself I cannot, nor is there a man in our country that can take it off my shoulders. Therefore am I going this way, as I told you, that I may be rid of my burden."
"Who bid thee go this way to be rid of thy burden?"
"A man that appeared to me to be a very great and honourable person. This man, as I remember, is evangelist."
"Beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world, more is that unto which he hath directed thee, and that thou shalt find, if thou would be ruled by his counsel, thou hast met with something as I perceive already. I see the dirt of the sloth of despond is upon thee, but thou slow is the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on that way. Hear me, I am older than thou. Thou art like to meet with on the way which thou goest wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, swords, lions, dragons, darkness, and, in a word, death, and what not. These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies. And why should a man so carelessly cast himself away by giving heed to a stranger?"
"Why, sir, this burden upon my back is more terrible to me than are all these things which you have mentioned. Nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in my way, if so be I can also meet with deliverance from my burden."
"How camest thou by that burden at first?"
"By reading this book in my hand."
"I thought so. And it has happened unto thee as to other weak men, who, meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions, which distractions do not only unman men, as thine, I perceive, have done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures to obtain they know not what."
"I know what I would obtain It is ease for my heavy burden.
But why wilt thou seek ease this way, seeing so many dangers attended? Especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining what thou desirest, without the dangers that thou in this way wilt run thyself into. Yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add that instead of these dangers thou shalt meet with much safety, friendship, and content.
Pray, sir, open this secret to me.
Why, in yonder village, the village is named Morality, there dwells a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man, and a man of a very good name, and has skill to help men off which burdens at thine from their shoulders. Yea, to my knowledge, he hath done a great deal of good this way. And besides, he hath skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burden. To him, as I said, thou mayest go and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, but if he should not be at home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility. That can do it. To speak on, well as the old gentleman himself, there I say thou mayest be eased of thy burden, and if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as indeed I would not wish thee, thou mayest send for thy wife and children to thee. So this village, where there are houses not standing empty, one of which thou mayest have at a responsible rate, provision is there also cheap and good, and that which all make thy life more happy is to be sure that thou shalt live by honest neighbours in credit and good fashion. There was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, if it be true that this gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice. And with that he thus farther spake.
Sir, which is the way to this honest man's house?
Do you see yonder high hill?
Yes, very well.
By that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his.
So Christian turned out of his way to go to Mr. Legality's house for help. But behold, when he was got hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of that was next the wayside did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture farther, lest the hill should fall on his head. Wherefore there he stood still, and knew not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him than while he was on his way. Therefore came also flashes of fire out of the hill that made Christian afraid that he should be burned. Here therefore he sweat and did quake for fear. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. Also he saw Evangelist coming to meet him, at the sight of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew near and nearer, and coming up to him, he looked upon him with severe and dreadful continuance, and thus began to reason with Christian. What dost thou here, Christian?
Said he, at which words Christian knew not what to answer. Wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist's father,
Art thou not the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction?
Yes, dear sir,
I am the man. Did I not direct thee the way to the wicket gate?
Yes, dear sir, said Christian.
How is it then that thou art so quickly turned aside from thou art for out of the way? I met with a gentleman as soon as I had got over the slough of despond, who persuaded me that I might, in the village before me, find a man that could take off my burden.
What was he?
He looked like a gentleman, and talked much to me. It got me at last to yield, so I came hither. But when I beheld this hill, and now it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand lest I should fall on my head.
What said that gentleman to you?
Why, he asked me whither I am going, and I told him.
And what said he then?
He asked me if I had family, and I told him, but said I am so loaded with the burden that it's upon my back that I cannot take pleasure in them, as formerly.
And what said he then?
He bid me with speed, get rid of my burden, and I told him it was ease I sought, and said I am therefore going to yonder gate, to receive further direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, and shorter, not so attended with difficulties, as the way, sir, that you sent me in, which way, he said, will direct you to a gentleman's house that is skilled to take off this burden. So I believed him, and turned out of the way into this, if haply I might be soon eased of my burden. And when I came to this place, and beheld things as they are, I stopped for fear, as I said of danger, but now I know not what to do.
Then, said Evangelist, stand still a little longer, so I may show thee the words of God. So he stood trembling. Then, said Evangelist, see that you refuse not what that I speaketh, for if they escaped not, who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven, said he. Moreover, now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. He also did thus apply them. Thou art the man that art running into this misery. Thou hast begun to reject the counsel of the Most High, and to draw back thy foot from the way of peace, even almost to the hazarding of thy prediction. Then Christian fell down at his feet as dead, crying, Woe is me, for I am undone. At the sight of which Evangelist caught him by the right hand, saying, All manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men. Be not faithless, but believing. Then did Christian again a little revive, and stood up trembling as at first before Evangelist. Then Evangelist proceeding, saying, Give more earnest heed to the things that I shall tell thee of. I will not show thee who it was that deluded thee, and who it was also to whom he sent thee. The man that met thee is one worldly wiseman, and he is rightly so called, partly because he savoureth only to the doctrine of the world. Therefore he only goes to the town of morality to church, and partly because he loveth the doctrine best. For it saveth him from the cross, and because he is of this carnal temper, therefore he seeketh to pervert my ways. The right. Now, there are 3 things in this man's counsel that thou must utterly abhor. Number 1, his turning thee out of the way. Number 2, his labouring to render the cross obedious to thee. And number 3, and this settling thy feet in that way that leadeth unto the misgranting of death. First, thou must abhor his turning out of the way, yea, and thine own consisting thereto, because this is to reject the counsel of God for the sake of the counsel of a worldly wise man. The Lord says, Strive to enter in at the strait gate, the gate to which I send thee, for strait is the gate that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it.
From this little wicket gate, and from the way thereto hath this wicked man turned thee, to the bringing of thee almost to destruction. Hate therefore his turning thee out of the way, and abhor thyself for hearkening to him. Secondly, thou must abhor his labouring to render the cross oblivious unto thee, for thou art to prefer it before the treasure of Egypt. Beside, the King of Glory hath told thee that he will save his life shall lose it, and he that comes after him and hates not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yes, and his own life, also he cannot be my disciple. I say, therefore, for a man to labour to persuade thee that shall be thy death, without which the truth hath said, thou canst not have eternal life, this doctrine thou must abhor. Thirdly, thou must hate his setting off thy feet in the way that leadeth to the restriction of death. And for this thou must consider to whom he sent thee, and also how unable that person was to deliver thee from thy burden. He to whom thou wast sent for ease, being by name Legality, is the son of the bondwoman, which now is in bondage with her children, and is in a mystery, this Mount Sinai, which thou hast feared will fall on thy head. Now, if she with her children are in bondage, how canst thou expect by them to be made free? This Legality, therefore, is not able to set thee free from thy burden. No man was as yet ever rid of this burden by him. No, nor even is like to be. Ye cannot be justified for the works of the law, for by the deeds of the law no man living can be rid of his burden. Therefore, Mr. Worldly Wiseman is an alien, and Mr. Legality a cheat, and for his son Civility, notwithstanding his simperings, looks, he is but a hypocrite, and cannot help thee. Believe me, there is nothing in all this noise, as thou hast heard of these sottish men, but a design to beguile thee of thy salvation, by turning thee from the way in which I had set thee. After this, Evangelist called aloud to the heavens for confirmation of what he had said, and with that there came words and fire out of the mountain under which poor Christian stood, that made the hair of his flesh stand up. The words were thus pronounced: As many as are of the works of the law are under the curse, for it is written, Cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of law to do them. Now Christian looked for nothing but death, and began to cry out lamentably, even cursing the time in which he met with Mr. Worldly Wiseman, still calling himself 1,000 fools for hearkening to his counsel. He also was greatly ashamed to think that this gentleman's arguments, following only from the flesh, should have such prevalency with him as to cause him to forsake the right way. This done, he applied himself again to Evangelist in words and sense as follows:
Sir, what think you? Is there any hope? May I now go back and go up to the wicket gate? Shall I not be abandoned for this and sent back from thence ashamed? I am sorry. I have hearkened to this man's counsel, but may my sin be forgiven.
Then Christian began to weep. Then said Evangelist to him,
Thy sin is very great, for by it thou hast committed two evils. Thou hast forsaken the way that is good, to tread in forbidden paths. Yet will the man at the gate receive thee, for he has good will from men. Only, said he, take heed that thou turn not aside again, lest thou perish from the way. when his wrath is kindled but a little. Then did Christian address himself to go back, and Evangelist, after he had kissed him, gave him one smile and bid him God's speed.